November 29th, 2021. In this board of building appeals is being to consider the first case on our docket, which is case number 21-0137. And it deals with the property known as Project Silver located in Trenton, Ohio. And it's the Division of Industrial Compliance case. The division's adjudication number is noted on our docket. Let's have an introduction of the parties. Let's begin with the appellant and or appellant representatives. Please state your full name, spell your last name, and then the capacity by which you're here in a representative way. We'll do the same thing with the division personnel. I'll have an oath administered and we'll begin.
All right, very well. My name is David Semproch, S-E-M-P-R-O-C-H. I'm the architect of record for the project in question, Ohio license registration number A0413615.
Okay. Anyone else with you?
I also believe the owner or owner's representative, Gustavo Soli, is on the phone with me, as well as our construction project manager, Joe Provolish, as well as design project manager, Edward Roisman.
Okay. We'll consider that to be the appearances. Is Jeff and or one of his colleagues present?
Yes, sir. Good morning. Jeff Eaton, Superintendent with the Division of Industrial Compliance.
Okay, if the four appellant representatives, including the owner and Mr. Eaton, raise their right hand, I'd ask you, Standing, you administer the oath.
Please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Yes, I do.
Okay, who's going to present for the appellant, Mr. Semproch?
Yes.
Okay. I do know that we have some correspondence between you and Mr. Eaton. Do we need to address that at this time?
I believe that's the case, correct, Jeff? We should take care of that before we talk design issues.
Yeah, yes, sir. I believe it's not the division's jurisdiction. It looks like it previously went to the city attorney's building department. So that would be the question, I guess, we need to clarify.
Okay, so in other words, what would be the status of your adjudication then?
It would not be valid, apparently, and I just noticed this Friday going through the correspondence to prepare for today's hearing, came across the building plan approval, final plan approval from, I think it's Scott Young is the building official there, and that's when I noticed that Trenton is a certified building department. So I'm not sure, how the preliminary review hit our office and was inadvertently entered into the database. But if they are in fact a certified building department, then our order would not be a valid order since we do not have jurisdiction in the city of Trenton.
What's the timing on this construction?
Construction has begun. The project was permitted in a multiple permit stage with foundations and superstructure, followed by building shell. But construction is underway for the project as we speak.
Have you been dealing with the city or just with the state?
To this point, Joe, we've been dealing directly with the city of Trenton, correct?
He's muted.
See,
The owner is.
yeah.
Yes, to my knowledge, it's been dealt with the city of Trenton.
Okay, what are your thoughts?
Well, let me ask, the permit issued for the phase construction, was that a state permit?
I do not know off the top of my head. Joe, do you know if the permits were issued by the state or the city of Trenton?
I think he's muted, but
This is Jeff Eden. I checked our database and we have no activity in the city of Trenton since basically 2011. Database.
Sounds to me like we don't have jurisdiction, but I don't know that, I mean, would we continue it? Allowing them to go to the city?
Has the city issued an adjudication order?
No, the only adjudication order I have is after a preliminary discussion with Bill. His last name escapes me at the moment.
It's Bill Phillips.
Yes, correct, with Bill Phillips.
I don't think we have jurisdiction either,
But I want to make sure that we leave the avenue open
in case we do.
Okay.
in case we do. Especially with, I mean, I don't know if we know for sure. I think it's supremely confident that the state hasn't issued the permits for you to start construction. Or if that's
Well, I think I heard from Jeff, they did not, at least their database had suggested they did not.
And actually, Mr. Chair, in the packet of information Susan forwarded me, there is an actual copy of the plan approval from the city of Trenton's building department. So I'm not sure why the prelim actually hit our office, but it needs to go back. If there is an actual issue after subsequent to the plan approval, that should go back to the city of Trenton as a vision to get the office. So you've got proper order before the board.
So, if we don't have jurisdiction, we don't have jurisdiction. It's not even something that we could dismiss necessarily. We just not consider it. Or we could try to exercise some discretion and continue it and allow them to do this.
But here's what just because they've already paid for our fees, we have it as an active case. This might be a question that we would have to do during a continuance to ask our AG if we're allowed to keep it open if the city of Trenton decided to issue a similar adjudication order. That's why I think it would probably be in best order to continue, let Mr. Eden and his team have discussions with the city of Trenton, see if they would issue a similar adjudication order. And that way we can pick up if we need to, assuming our AG says that's okay for us to do. And if not, you know, then the appellant can let Susan know that they don't want to continue on.
So,
Just leave.
yeah,
leave it at-
exactly. Said otherwise, if you were to be adjudicated the same way by the city, and that's likely that you would, if we kept this case, we might be able to just hear it since you paid the appellate fees, rather than just accept it on faith that we don't have jurisdiction, sort of dump the case, and then so that's what we're debating. I'm comfortable with that.
I mean, unless you want to reapply a second time. Again, we're trying to leave the avenue open in case you need to come back before us through the city.
Okay.
So I think ultimately what we're saying is that if the city's issued a certificate or a plan approval and you don't need to appeal anything, let Susan know, and then we can close out the case from there. If the city has adjudicated something, then you already have an appeal on our docket, and we can see if we can substitute city's adjudication for the state's adjudication and hear the appeal.
Okay, I think that's probably the route we need to go. I would entertain a motion.
Yes, Mr. Chair, for Board of Building Appeals case number 21-0137, I move to continue.
Motion's been made. Is there a second? Second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, we're gonna do that sort of prophylactic move here and continue this and allow you to deal with the city, okay?
Okay, very good.
Thanks.
Thank you for your time and understanding.
Fair enough. Okay, you said we had our action parties? Okay, that'll conclude that case for the time being, and we'll move on to an Ashland, adjudication. That is case number 21-0138. And it deals with the Woodside Storage Rentals facility located in Ashland, and jurisdiction's adjudication, order number is noted on our docket. Let's have an introduction of the parties, beginning first with the appellant and or appellant representative. State your full name, spell your last name, and capacity by which you're here. We'll do the same thing with the building official. We'll have an oath administered, and we'll begin.
This is Aaron Heidinger, Heydinger, and I'm with Gandy Heidinger Group, acting as the appellant for Woodside Storage Rentals. And Eli Miller, the owner, is on as well.
Okay, is Mr. Miller on?
Yeah, my name, Eli Miller, I'm here.
Okay, and the building official? He was on, maybe muted.
Yeah. Mr. Kremser was on. We heard him earlier.
Yeah, didn't see him, I can't see him.
They're on by phone.
Mr. Krenzer, can you hear us? Phone number.
I didn't write them down.
Okay. All right, we'll stand adjourned for just a minute.
I can figure it out. Mr. Krenzer? Aaron, what phone number are you?
614-315-0539.
Okay, thank you.
He would be a 330.
Mr. Miller? What phone number?
740-263-9476.
Thank you. And who is 317-727-8423?
This is actually Christina Collister. I'm here for the 130.
Hi, Christina. Okay.
Hi.
And 317-919-3626?
Connor Britt, I'm here for the 130 as well.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, we lost him.
Here we go. Somebody's coming in. 419, that should be him.
Mr. Krenzer?
He's being.
Hi.
Hello?
Hi, can you guys hear me now? I'm on the Microsoft Teams, and it required a password and an account to join, and I joined anonymously, and you can't hear me.
Well, we can hear you now, so you're fine.
Okay, good.
Go ahead and state your name and the capacity by which you're representing the building department, and then we're going to have an oath administered to the appellant and to you.
Sure. Shane Kremser, that's K-R-E, M as in Mary, S as in Sam, E-R, city engineer, building official for the city of Ashland.
Thank you. All right, Mr. Heidinger, Mr. Miller, and Mr. Kremser, wherever you're located, if you would stand, raise your right hand, and Sandy, would you administer the oath?
Please raise your right hands. Do you swear affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
I do.
Okay.
I do.
Very good. Mr. Heidinger, are you presenting?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
All right. Thank you all for your time. We're here Mr. Miller's building another set of storage units. We had a similar appeal a few years back. We actually thought that this had changed, but basically it's appealing to section 403.1 and 403.3, basically plumbing fixtures requiring a restroom for the storage facility. This facility will be remotely monitored. There won't be any staff there. So we're back to appeal, like I said, those plumbing sections for installation of a restroom at the storage facility.
Okay, any questions at this time for Mr. Hague? Okay, hearing no questions of the appellant's representative, Mr. Krenzer, what are your thoughts?
Well, I reached out to the Board of Building Standards, their head plans examiner. Two things. One, here locally, we've had some issues with people living in these storage units illegally. Actually, we had our fire department responded to an overdose and found out that storage units were being rented out and people were living in them. And so one of the concerns, well, that's the first concern. Second concern is that when I was looking at the restroom requirements, the state of Ohio has amended the model code allowing for mercantile occupancies with occupant loads of 50 or less not to have to provide customer facilities. Now, I understand that's a different occupancy, but it just didn't make a whole lot of sense to me why there would be an exception for a mercantile use where business is being conducted and not for these storage units, which are very rarely, I mean, they're obviously people are storing things in them. You know, I had some concerns that if restrooms are provided, then it would be easier for people to use these as habitats more easily. So that was another concern because we have experienced that.
Questions of Mr. Krenzer?
So you would be against having restrooms for this facility? Did I lose you? Mr. Krenzer?
Oh, pardon me. I'm sorry, I couldn't hear that.
Oh, Mr. Krenzer, then, so you would be against having restrooms at this facility?
Correct. I don't think, yes, I like I said, when I was talking to, I think it's Debbie, the master plans examiner from the state, she was talking and she was referencing the model code and it wasn't real clear, but she was referencing different literature, noting that that's the intent. But and then I came back to her and said, well, this exception is an Ohio exception for the mercantile occupancies with an occupant load of 50 or less, that they don't have to provide customer restrooms. So it just didn't seem to make sense to me that these new storage utility or storage units would have to have a general restroom for the occupants that would be sporadic, or the customers that would be sporadic.
Okay, any other questions by members of the board of either of the parties? No. Okay, thoughts?
I'm in favor of the variance. I think it makes sense.
Yeah, I agree with that. And this situation before this kind of, they're not really living facilities.
Yeah, I think where we've drawn the distinction for these type of facilities, if there's an office that is staffed, that would require restrooms, the fact that this and facility access Be supportive of the variance.
Any conditions?
I don't think so.
Okay. All right, I would entertain a motion.
You got it. I got it in a second. Okay. I'll second it. It's fantastic. For Board of Building Appeals case number 21-0138, the appellant is US 42 Storage LLC for the premises Woodside Storage Rentals at 1220 US Route 42, Ashland, Ohio 44805. The appellee is Shane Kremser, building official for the City of Ashland Building Department, and adjudication order number 21-152. I move to grant the variance without condition, noting the no objection of the building official.
Okay, Mr. Beegan's duly made the motion. Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the variance is granted unanimously without condition. Best of luck, gentlemen.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Take care.
All right, we have our Elyria. Great.
No, that was, continued.
Oh.
Then we're waiting on the building official for the 130.
Waiting on 130. Okay, we'll take a quick break.
local building officials are.
Christina, I emailed Dennis Dickard, so once he joins the meeting, we can go ahead and get
Yeah.
started on your case.
Just by permitted projects and today.
I can.
Christina, did you hear me?
Yeah. Can you hear me
Okay.
on this line?
30 to my next hearing.
Yeah, I emailed Dennis Dickard, so once he joins the meeting, we can get started.
Okay. So I'm on both, but for some reason I can't unmute on the live video, so I'll just stay on this audibly
Okay,
and watch the video.
okay.
Thanks.
Uh-huh.
Here's that there are, 2 attendees that are viewing, the hearing remotely. And what may have happened is that you tried to sign in through Teams and are only able to see it and not participate. If you are scheduled to participate in a hearing today, please call in at the number that the executive sent to you, and you can
Oh, are you muted on yours? There we go. Dan.
Hello.
Hi, Dennis.
Hi. Hi. This is Dennis Dickard.
Okay, does that need the others?
You do,
Okay.
for your 130.
All right, let's get back on the record. It is 125, it's not quite 130, but let me to get it started early. This is a Butler County matter. This is case number 21-0131. The Liberty, the project at the Liberty Center Mall in Liberty Township. Have an introduction of the parties. Appellant's representatives. State your full name, spell your last name for the record. If you would, we'll do the same thing with the building official. We'll have an oath administered and we'll begin. Ms. Collister.
Christina Collister, Collester, with RTM Consultants.
And Dennis Dickard, with Butler County Building Department.
All right, is Connor Britt present on behalf of the appellant?
I am present. First name Connor, last name Britt, Britt.
Okay, if the three are situated, would stand, raise your right hand. We'll have an oath administered by Sandy.
Please raise your right hands. Do you swear from tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
I do.
Okay, fair enough. Ms. Collister, are you going to present?
I am.
Okay, you got the floor.
Okay. What we have here is the Liberty Mall in Butler County, Ohio. We are taking 8 tenant spaces and converting them into separate office suites. And the Elevate office will be leasing approximately 25,000 square feet from the mall. And then in that space, they will sublet those individual spaces, approximately 80 of them in this project, I believe, to other tenants. The issue is that the Section 402 of the code as a mall did not really anticipate this type of use in a mall. It was thinking retail, assembly, those type of things. So the requirement for the tenant separation is between tenants, and that's a 1 hour requirement. So what we're asking here, given that we have individual tenants within the mall tenant space, is that a clarification be made and perhaps an adjudication ordered that allows the tenant separation to be between the mall and the Elevate office tenant, and not for each individual office space that would be subleased by Elevate office to individual users.
Okay, questions, Ms. Collister?
And then the second one is for the plumbing fixture count. Again, I think there's probably just a little bit of confusion going back and forth because the mall did not necessarily anticipate office space within the mall space other than just the mall office. So what we're asking is that the plumbing fixture calculations that were submitted be allowed to apply, which generally takes a look at both the requirements of the office and the requirements of the mall. If the lease space is calculated as mall space, and then the number of fixtures provided be approved as meeting the requirements or the intent of the code for this type of a building.
Okay, questions, Ms. Collister, with respect to the fixtures?
Yeah, on the first part, as far as the rating, trying to follow the drawings here, I didn't see in any of the notes. Is the new business use separated from the mall use by rated partitions?
Yes, it is. With the exception of the mall allows for that open front area there to be typical to a mall storefront.
So it's
that
not
is not
separated.
So it meets section 402 if we consider the entire elevate office space as a mall tenant.
You can't have both. You're either separated as a separate use.
No, we're separated
or
exactly.
you're not. I think you're trying to do both. You're trying to say this is a mall tenant and we don't have to be separated, but it's a different use, so we do have to be separated. So
No. The mall section requires the separation from other tenants. The mall elevate office tenant is separated from the other tenants by the required rated space. The requirement is it allows for mall tenants to be open to the actual mall concourse area. So that's that one section that we have where you have the main entrance. That's open to the mall concourse. But for the tenant space on either side, they are separated from the actual tenant to tenant separation for mall construction. And from that back corridor, the exit access corridor. I think if you go down to the life safety plan.
I see
Which is on
that.
page four.
Are you trying to say that this is then not a change of use?
Well, and this is where it gets complicated because when you're
It doesn't get complicated. It doesn't get complicated. Either follow one path or the other path, and it seems to me like you're trying to follow both paths. So that's where my confusion is.
So it's not a change of occupancy from a mercantile mall building. It's a change of use within the tenant space.
It is a change of use because this is not a mercantile use.
Well, so we can have, there are other business occupancies that fall into a mall. For instance, if you have a hair salon in a mall, that's technically a business occupancy. If you have a small food establishment that has under 50 occupants, that would actually be a business occupancy. So the way we handle, there's two ways to handle separation of occupancies within a mall. One is with the anchor stores where you have the large mercantile building and then those are separated. And then we provide tenant to tenant separation within the mall space, but all tenant spaces are allowed to be open to the mall concourse. Just so that it functions as a mall. You don't have to have that rated separation. So we are still providing the section 402 required tenant separation. The question on this particular variance is if each individual subleased tenant, so all of those 80 little spaces, need to have a 1 hour tenant separation, or if it's okay to put the tenant separation where the tenant separation is shown, which would be similar to mercantile or mercantile to assembly or mercantile to business or assembly to business within a regular mall structure. I think that the confusion here is that because all of these are sublet individually, the tenant elevate office then has 80 separate tenants within their tenant space. So we're asking that since we're putting these little office spaces within the mall building, which is actually more restrictive than if we built this as a separate office building, the sprinkler requirements are higher, the fire alarm requirements are higher, and the construction type is higher. We would, I guess that's the individual question.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. To me, it seems like you're doing both and to take those exceptions. I would agree that it doesn't make sense to separate every single one of these offices out, right? Mm-hmm. But that it should be separated from the rest of the mall. And you're saying that, well, it is on all but the side that faces the mall. So that's why I'm saying, to me, it doesn't seem confusing. Like, I would agree, you don't have to separate all of these things, but this particular use as a collective needs to be separated from the rest. In my opinion. And then let me answer a question on the fixture count thing. Has there been an analysis done? I didn't necessarily see it in the information that I got, comparing the previous use to this use as far as number of occupants, as far as not requiring the additional, any additional fixtures. So the question, in my opinion, is, all right, do we follow, you know, this use, do we have enough fixtures? I want to see a comparison of when it was previously mercantile use, there's an occupant load calculated for that, for those previous uses, compared to what this occupant load is.
Yes, it's been provided on the, if you look at the, I sent a separate attachment, but it's also on page 4 of the drawing. So if you take the mall area that's required for calculation of tenant spaces, to get the mall fixture count, we exceed that. And since we actually have a smaller occupant,
I'm not talking about the mall, I'm talking about for these tenant spaces. Has there been a calculation of what the occupant load for the tenant spaces of the previous use versus the occupant load of the new use?
Yes. And it complies. The question becomes whether you need.
Is that the whole mall or just those tenant spaces?
It's the whole mall.
Well, that's what, I'm not asking about the whole mall. So is there a calculation that shows the spaces that were previously mall, I assume mercantile spaces, right? There was an occupant load calculation for those, or you could back into one compared to what the new occupant load is with the new use.
Yeah, so what we have there is if you take the 22,912 feet that was mall occupant, and if you calculate the fixtures for that, we have the fixture count. And then if you take the tenant occupancy as the 374 occupants that we would have for that space, then there's the fixture count for that. And the fixture count for the new use is less than was required for the mall.
Okay.
But if we're sharing,
I guess what I don't see is the required, what's the occupant load for the new business use? Let me ask that question. And then help me understand where these charts you have there.
That is,
It's like it's 374.
so it was 3,742, 374 occupants for the office area.
Well, I see that you got that backing out of the occupant mall load calculation to get what it was previously. What is the occupant load for the business area though?
374.
Okay, and then how many fixtures are required for those 374?
We would need 4 water closets for males, 4 for females, and 3 lavatories for males, 3 for females.
Okay. I don't think I'm missing something, right? But so what was the occupant load and the number required? Is that what's on the left there? So your fixture calculations, what was for that space?
Yes.
Okay. I guess then I understand it.
All right, any other questions?
Yeah, I have a question. Isn't the tenant space, is it 2,200 square feet? Is that, or is it 25,000 square feet? Is that what that is?
Yes. Well, so for the tenant space was before the switch, it was 22,912 square feet of leasable area.
And you have an occupant load of 374?
For the mall, it was 1,146 when we used the mall counts. When we use the office counts, because the occupant load changes, we wind up with the 374.
For the tenant spaces, right?
Correct.
374. But if you prorate it based on what it was before when it was just a mall, it was a lot less than that. Is that right?
Except the mall requires less fixtures per person than the office space does.
So let me ask again, I think we're just trying to follow the math here. So when you say mall occupant load, total occupant load is 2,291. Is that for the mall or just for that tenant space?
That was for the mall. For our tenant space was 1,146. I'm sorry, divided by 2. I'm sorry, I'm off. It's for the mall.
Okay, well, so obviously your fixture count for the business area is gonna be less than the whole entire mall, right? So what I'm looking for is a comparison of that area that was previous tenant space, right? What the fixture requirements for that were, not for the whole mall. So we can compare that to the same amount of area that's used for a different use. Did anybody do that calculation?
The architect's not on, is he, Connor?
Any other questions? Okay, but Mr. Dickert,
Yes.
what's your position? What are your thoughts?
My thoughts about things, since we're on the topic of the fixtures, one of the difficulties is related to is the fact that some of the spaces in their demolition, they took out some restrooms that were in individual spaces. And so in that aspect, there was there's a net loss of fixtures and just the understanding of that. Right offhand, I believe that the original, I understood in the discussion so far that there's two different paths. Either you're trying to go down total mall path, or you're going to treat the whole mall as being separated from the rest. And I think what's being presented here is more relative to the mall. Now the part with the occupant load, I think this number may have been just for the upper floor level, but even there were some discrepancies when you're going by the mall's calculated space, the method provided in the section for the open and closed mall. And that was being presented. As far as I could understand their approach totally of if this was not in a mall and this was one tenant, you know, it makes sense that it could be just one big tenant. And I think the unusual part is being in the mall presented a scenario that was not the normal for a mall. So that's just where the position is that I could see it being either way, but I felt like that there was, if it's going the mall route, part of the issue that I had was if it was as a mall, each individual space, if it was depending on the word lease or whatever, each individual that wasn't aware or understanding like a normal one tenant would be, it seems like they would have some right to being protected from smoke and different things along those lines if we're talking about as sort of a mall concept. So again, I could see it going either way, because I do see as a big office firm, if they were there and that was just totally them, that part would meet it if they were truly one tenant.
Okay, any other questions of Mr. Dickert?
Yeah, let me ask Mr. Dickert, if this area as a business use group was separated from the rest of the mall, would that make you feel better about it?
I would, if they were able to show that it was truly, if they were going the route to say, this is a separated use building now from it, or they show how they met that, yes, because then it would not matter from that if it was truly being isolated on its own.
So from a mall concept plan, that's a very difficult thing to do. Normally in a mall, when we have a separate occupancy, it's an anchor store, which would be the Dick's or the Dillard's. Even those are still allowed to have the unprotected opening between the mall and the anchor store. The remainder of the separation is rated, and then all of the exits and everything is treated as an individual building separated from the mall so that they can't exit back into the mall. So it'd be difficult that you can't really create an anchor space within an existing building just because of the way it's constructed. So our difficulty in separating off the front of the store is that the front of none of the retail spaces are built to rated construction. So it would be kind of a rebuild in there. And I think that, and Connor, if you can help me out here, on the actual face of it, you just have that one section of glazing, which is the main entrance.
That's correct.
And then the remainder of it is, I'm assuming, drywall on steel studs, both sides, up to whatever the original bulkhead was.
Yep, correct.
So you almost, in theory, have the 1 hour separation. It's just that rebuilding that existing bulkhead all the way up to the deck might be complicated just because of the way those tend to be constructed in a mall.
They're on a second floor and of a mall, so that also complicates it.
Correct. So,
Was that Mr. Britt or Mr. Dickert?
I'm sorry, that second comment was Mr. Dickert.
Thank you.
So as we move into the reuse of the mall buildings, this is one of the reuses that we have, because once you put these office spaces in it, it allows the food courts and those type of things to exist and continue to maintain enough people to operate, and it allows the retail that's still available for malls to have a better presence and a better clientele. So this is one of the things that we're moving forward with, and we are struggling with this in the IBC as far as how to address it. But as far as a hazard goes, normally the business occupancy is considered less hazardous than mercantile. We have less combustible loading, obviously, than we would have in a mall building. We do have individual tenant separations, and it is fully sprinklered. So the sprinkler system is in there. The difficulty with the tenant separation is obviously bringing it up to the deck. Right now it goes up to the original level of the suspended ceiling. And then to build each of these all the way up to the deck would essentially be cost prohibitive to be able to reuse this space for that. So if you look at the egress path and how it's laid out and the number of exits that are maintained to those back rated corridors, in a mall, we design those corridors that come off the concourse as rated passageways to get to the stairs to allow the mall to function with an increased travel distance. But the travel distance here was calculated based on the office occupancy, and we meet that or exceed that. But we do have to use the mall concourse as part of our exit strategy. Again, occupant load wise, our occupant load is calculated smaller in an office use space than it would be for assembly or mercantile.
I do have a question. Has anybody reached out to the fire official?
Yeah, he didn't respond with any questions or comments. I think he's leaving it to the building side because it's a building code issue.
It's not really a building code issue. It's actually a park department issue because search and rescue on the second floor of a mall down through these little corridors back, because they're gonna have to go through every single one of those offices if the fire alarm goes off to make sure that nobody is in there, is a big fire department issue.
What is the fire jurisdiction? Is it Liberty Township? Is it Hamilton, Middletown?
This is Dennis Stickert. It is Liberty Township Fire Department.
Have they said anything to you about any concerns?
They did not.
If you notice on, when we sent out the
this is
request,
Connor Britt.
your original letter or request for appeal had you to reach out, the appellant to reach out to the local fire officials for input.
And this is Connor Britt. I did reach out to him. We had a meeting with him several months ago, and Mr. Dickard was on this call, and I had asked him the question of if he would support it, and in his statement, in short, if I remember, it was in the spirit of having this, you know, this concept come into play, he would support it. That was my recollection of his statement. So.
Okay, any questions of any of the parties? Okay. Thoughts?
Here's my thought. I think we're a little bit cart before the horse on this one, personally. I don't think the building official would be able to say, hey, he would support variance for all of these items, at least when I heard. As I started, to me, looking at, first of all, this is a great idea, right? We know retail uses are going down. This is a fantastic adaptive reuse. So as a concept, I think this is fantastic. I think it's a great idea. But to me, it's you can't do both. I think we either separate this area from the rest of the mall as a tenant, including all of the walls surrounding these, right? Or you have to treat it like a mall. You can't have both. So
when you say all of the walls surrounding these, are you, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, from my point of view, that would make the most sense for this. Now, I know that means, right, all those offices that are along the malls that have windows that are gonna get a little bit higher rents are not gonna get as higher rents, but you could still have the windows there. You could do a sprinkler curtain, you could do a fire shutter. There are other ways to do that, to get those openings in there that you see. But from my point of view, I think a path forward, and it seems like Mr. Dickard felt the same way. Hey, if we can separate this from the rest of the mall as a separate use and occupancy, there might be a path forward. That being said, I would like to make sure that you've at least convinced Mr. Dickard that the amount of space that is here for the plumbing fixtures, the previous occupant load just for this area, less the amount of fixtures that were removed, are still adequate, right? So that we're comparing apples to apples. We're not comparing the entire mall versus just its business occupant load. I want to compare what was there previously to what is there now as far as total number of required fixtures just for that area, so that we can actually say, okay, yes, there's a change of use, and yes, we have made sure that the number of fixtures, because we've reduced them, isn't going to have a negative impact on what the fixture load was previous, into the remaining fixtures that you're relying on. So in my opinion, I think a continuance is in order for you and Mr. Dickard to get together and then to maybe get on the same page. And again, I think we'd be supportive of a variance for this type of concept, but kind of as presented right now does not seem like something that I would motion to support for a variance. And then the last piece of that is hearsay of a meeting with a fire official that said he likes this concept, that he would support it, is different than showing him, hey, we have this space, it's not separated from the rest of the mall, and your team needs to go up at the second floor and do a search and rescue through all that. Are you okay with this? Right, I think I would like to get, best if the fire official would appear. If he doesn't want to appear, let him know objections, stating that he understands all of the issues with this, so that we can have some kind of understanding, so that when this goes into our file, Christine, this goes into your file, and it goes to the building official's file, the fire department, who has to live with the decisions we're making today, has some degree of confidence that he understands what he's going to be left with.
Okay.
That was a lot, I'm sorry.
Well, no, and that's Mr. Beegan's thoughts on this. Other thoughts, comments?
It seems to me that there are more people in this tenant space than it was when it was mercantile. You're having a lot of people in there. So I agree with Paul, the fixture count reducing it doesn't make sense at all to me. And as far as separating it from the rest of the mall, if they really want to argue that point, that there are vents and things going through that make it difficult, and I'd like to see the hardship, other than the words that it's insurmountable cost. And I think that's referring to the walls. What is the level of difficulty separating it?
Go ahead, Ms. Hollister.
The separation at the mall is in accordance with the requirements where you talk about the closely spaced sprinklers with the glazing.
Of uses.
Well, we use the sprinklers as the trade-off for the opening.
Yep.
And that's the requirement.
You can use the sprinkler, the trade-off for the openings. I don't think you can.
Oh, because you're saying it's not. Okay.
You're going from a
But that's
mercantile.
the point of the adjudication, right? Though, is to say
Right.
that. But you're not requiring us to build rated corridors and rated salon suites within this space. That's not what you're asking. That's not a portion.
Yeah, in my opinion, and we'll let the rest of the board members say, I don't think you need to separate all of these offices out from each other. No, but the space itself needs to be separated from the rest of the mall, in my opinion. And it sounds like.
But you would allow for the trade-off. You would allow for the trade-off that's there in the mall provision, which has to be applied in this case for the closely spaced sprinklers as the glazing. As opposed to a solid rated construction. The solid rated construction also the other problem with the solid rated construction is that then it makes the mall into it takes away part of that open feeling and a lively feeling of the mall. Right. So if we build, a bunch of solid walls on that big giant concourse, that's the issue. So normally you'll see on the malls that they have those closely spaced sprinkler heads within the bulkhead that's on the inside of the mall, and then on the inside of the tenant space at that opening.
Yes.
Okay.
So I guess from my perspective, have you redesigned the sprinkler system and the alarm system for the fact that you've now subdivided this space into basically a cube farm or a
Well, yeah, we're actually designing this as part of the mall, so it has the higher end requirements for fire alarm systems than it would have for office space, and the same with the sprinkler system. We're using the design densities that are required for the mall space.
Okay, so that leads to my next point then. I support the concept, and I understand your issue with having to build each of these individual office spaces all the way to the roof deck. So my question is an alternative, and I'm not designing your building for you, but my question is an alternative is, have you included sprinklers and/or smoke detectors in the, I call it a void space between the suspended ceiling and the roof deck, so that maybe we don't get the exact protection that's required of a B use, or sorry, the mall use, mercantile, but you're substituting it with some closely equivalent level of protection, or at least notification and extinguishment if possible.
Well, I mean, it's a fully sprinklered building, so all of the sprinklers will be, it's still a suspended ceiling like every tenant space would have if they have the suspended ceiling, or if it's open deck. This one happens to have suspended acoustical ceiling like half of probably the retail spaces. So the sprinklers would be on it. The space above the ceiling is non-combustible construction and therefore wouldn't require sprinkler protection under the code, any use of the building. And then the same with the fire alarm system. The notification is below the ceiling. And the notification is, pretty substantial given the fact that it's you're dividing the space up into different suites. So
I guess with all due respect, I'm making a suggestion in terms of, you don't want to see the monolith of a block wall on the exterior of your space facing the mall. Maybe you explore some alternatives that, while don't necessarily meet the letter of the code, may provide an added level of protection that kind of gets us to the same place. So you can have your windows, you can not have to put water curtains potentially, or shutters or fire shutters or things like that. And in lieu, we've done some detection in the void space. I just throw that out there, and maybe my colleagues don't agree, but that's kind of where I'm at this point.
well, I guess we'll take the continuancy and talk to the local building official and local fire official, and move forward with that. Yes.
Okay, any objections then, gentlemen, to a continuance? No. Mr. Dickard, any objection to a continuance?
No.
Would entertain a motion.
Mr. Chair, for Board of Building Appeals, case number 21-0131, I move to continue. Okay, that motion's been made. Is there a second? Second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, Ms. Collister, we'll continue the matter, allow you to sort of do a timeout and get with Mr. Dickard and the fire official. We'll see where it goes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
That concludes that case, and then we have our in-person case, and I'll let you 114. This is a Madison Fire Department citation matter, and the citation number is noted on our docket. I guess we'll begin first with, since the citations being brought by the fire department, we'll begin with counsel for the appellate. State your full name, spell your last name for the record, and then we'll go to fire official, and we'll do the same thing with the appellant.
My name is Stacy Dane. Last name is spelled D-A and Mezzanine Mary E. And I am legal counsel for the Madison Fire District.
Terry Sopko, spelling the last name is S-O-P-K-O. I'm a captain with Madison Fire District.
Thank you.
Attorney Robert Moore, M-O-R-E, and I'm counsel for Cast 307, Mr. Tony DeBevick.
Thank you. John, if you enter your first.
My name is Tony DeBevick, Anthony DeBevick,
Okay.
owner of Cast 307.
I'm Michael Markham. I'm Tony's architect.
Okay, fair enough. If I would have the three of you, other than counsel, stand, raise your right hand.
Raise your right hand. You swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do. Okay, is there a need for opening statements?
We will follow whatever the board's
Well-
expedite things and streamline it as much as
Yeah,
possible.
the oddity of these cases are that the citations brought by the fire official, and, but you're appealing, your clients have appealed the citation. Normally you begin, but oftentimes we'll begin with the presentation of the citation, but we're not doing, it's one way, half dozen the other does. Do you have any thoughts?
No, I'm fine with the presenting citation.
Okay.
So I don't know if you've been able to review the documents that I submitted.
We have.
We started with an inspection with Cast 307 in 2019. The occupancy load came into question at that point, which Mr. DeBevick's second architect calculated the occupancy load under the 100 that was required in the fire code to require a sprinkler system. So therefore that inspection was closed out. This year, returning from a call, we noted that Mr. DeBevick added a covered porch to the back of the winery, which then prompted us to send a request to Mr. DeBevick for drawings for review for this covered porch. Drawings were submitted. Our plans examiner did a plans examination, calculated the occupancy load well over the 100. Thus, we issued a citation for sprinkler system requirements under the fire code.
Okay, there's two citation encompasses two.
Correct. The one is for the original, for the sprinkler system. The other is for the fire alarm that's required for monitoring of the sprinkler system.
Okay, Mr. Moore, you have any questions?
No questions.
Gentlemen, any questions of Captain?
No, not at this time.
Okay.
Just briefly, the reason for the appeal hearing is twofold. One, we believe that the agricultural exemption applies here too. And two, if not, we believe that the occupancy load is described in the code. We do not exceed the 100 that would trigger that requirement for the sprinkler system. And the secondary citation is obviously contingent upon the first citation. So if we're not required to have a sprinkler system, I think the second citation would go away on its own. So we would present evidence to the effect that the agricultural exemption would apply, and also that we do not meet the occupant load of 100 or more.
Okay, great. You want, are you going to inquire of Mr. DeBevick?
If it may please the board, I would just let Mr. DeBevick speak in the narrative form, if that's fine. Mr. DeBevick, go ahead.
It's a little bit of deja vu. In 1970, we conceived this whole thing. I was 23 years old, 22 at the time, I guess it was, to start a farm market on our farm. As of today, we've been on this farm for 104 years as a family. And we've operated as a winery business for 50 years. It's one of the first wineries to start up since the Prohibition in Ohio. It's one of the wineries in Southern Ohio. So we were kind of on the cutting edge and went to Ohio State University, studied homology and studied fruit at the Department of Agriculture. And came out of that with a lot of assistance from Ohio State University as they were trying to rejuvenate the wine industry in the state of Ohio. We had a federal grant to do that, and I was one of the kind of experimental people that did it. I came out of the military, and in 1970, we tried to start this winery in Madison Township, shut us down because we were putting a business in a rural community. My mother was the one that was the active one, so I've taken over her position now. And we fought township at the time, saying that we were exempt because of the 51% agricultural exemption rule. Farm Bureau was involved in it. I got involved in it. Butler got involved in it. And Madison Township, this has come back to us again 50 years later. Basically, we feel that our operation, we're the largest grower in the state of Ohio for fruit. We produce 90-95% of any given year for the operations that we have. Our main facility that was built in 1971, opened in 72, was Jolly Dimony Vineyards, run as a family business. In 1918 and 19, we started construction of a second location, mainly because it wasn't so far out of town and a rural dirt road. We needed a place that was more accessible to people. We built that facility, and as they stated earlier, that we were inspected, and our occupancy was under what was required. Of course, we had COVID. 2000 came along, 2020, and being as fairly aggressive, one of the largest wineries in the state of Ohio, we felt it was important that we get ahead of that, and that our customers wanted open space to be able to come and visit facilities. 6-foot spacing, open air. So we built this facility around that kind of idea. But 2020 really proved to be what people are looking for, and even today, for that matter of fact, and maybe even into the future. The problem is in Northeast Ohio, it rains half the time. And in the summer, when the fish are there, when we really have tourism, between May and October, it's important that we had some type of cover. We had people sitting outside. We were very busy on days that it was nice, and nothing when it was threatening rain, cloudy, or chance of rain, or rain. And so we thought simply we'll just put a cover on the side of the building, outside with an open 3 sides, so people could sit underneath and not get wet when they were visiting. That's simply all we decided to do, and we felt that we were exempt again because of 51%. If anybody in the state of Ohio is a farm winery, a state winery, it's our operation. That was one of my goals when I started the business when I was 23 years old, is to make our farm successful, which it was not at the time. My parents, grandparents, were going out of the farming business when it came to agricultural grapes. And simply, the times have changed. I guess the rules have changed, and unfortunately, it's very discriminatory. We happen to be the people that they decided to, I guess, attack agribusiness. This is going to affect not only us, but riding rings, farm markets, all kinds of endeavors when it comes to small family farm businesses. If you've ever been a farmer, which I assume 5 people there, you probably came from a farm background at your age. It's not an easy business. I fortunately have been pretty aggressive with it. I've been fortunate with my health to have a good business. We simply are not there to break the rules. This building that we built is a very well-built structure with all the requirements that were put upon us from the EPA to the soil and water to the plumbing department, the building department. I was just told recently that I'm exempt by the Lake County Building Department. It's very clear I am exempt. The health department, certainly we have those requirements, but we try to comply with everything. So all of a sudden we get this citation over what we felt was whatever. And then we were told if it was just separated by 1 inch or 2, it would make a big difference. Well, I guess the fire knows the difference between 2 inches and 3 inches. I don't know. But I just got disappointed. That's all I got to say. Thank you very much.
Steve, any other questions?
None.
Mr. Snyder, if I may inquire, a couple of clarifications. Mr. Beck, the original structure here, there was an original structure built, correct?
Correct.
When was that built?
That was opened in 2019, June of 2019.
So the patio area that we're talking about today, the rain cover was not part of that original construction?
No, it was not.
And in fact, when was that rain cover put on?
Well, that was finished in June of 2021.
Okay. And if you know, what is the occupancy permit, the occupancy load for your building?
The official occupancy load is 89.
Okay. And as it's related to the rain cover patio area, you said it's open air, correct?
Yes.
I'm going to show you a rendering of it. Does this accurately depict?
Yes, that is the rendering.
I have. I think this was included in the. It was, yeah, thank you. I also have the architectural drawings. On the patio area here that we're looking at, Mr. Debelli, which is in the question here as related to the citation, it's, there are no permanent fixtures on the patio itself, correct?
No, just movable.
And there's open egress to all three sides of the, at least three sides of the patio, correct?
Easy access off the patio, yes.
Okay, and when the structure was built, this was an independent freestanding structure. The roof was joined merely for drainage purposes, correct?
That's all this is just for water drainage. That building, that structure is self-contained from a structural point of view. It was designed that way.
None of the trusses or timbers in between the buildings connect, correct?
No.
What kind of fire system do you have in the main building?
I don't have a fire system.
Do you have an alarm system?
Yes.
And you have a,
It has capability of doing that, yeah.
okay. And in addition to alarm system, you do have extinguishers, et cetera?
Correct. All that has been approved, yes.
Okay, and then you do have additional egress from the patio and the building that is, there's multiple entrances, I guess I should say, to the main building, correct?
Correct. We have all that was approved. We have multiple, actually more than required.
Okay, and the patio here is also accessible to the main building through some sliding folding doors, is that correct?
Correct. Into the building, out of the building, and then off from underneath the cover, yes.
Okay, and if there were
Mr. Moore, I'm going to interrupt you for a second. Mr. Debevic, you keep mentioning was approved. Approved by whom?
Well, the fire department gave us inspection, and that's what we did the occupancy permit, and they also checked our fire extinguishers and doors and the exit lights and the lights on the outside of the exit. All that was approved in 2019.
when the original structure was built?
Correct. All that was approved. We have all the required lights. And building department didn't require anything. We have a requirement. Our family has a requirement. You know, we live there in that community for the last 104 years. We have a very good reputation of doing things right in that community. This building is very well built with all the standards. None of it was required by the building department. They just told me the other day, I'm not required. And so I have this conflict of not required here for the last 50 years. And then suddenly now we have a second set of rules. And so we have a set of laws that were upheld by the Ohio Supreme Court on a couple of occasions that's been challenged over the years. And not too many years ago that was challenged by another winery down the street. And it was upheld again, that we are exempt. Now we have these new rules that have come into place that have fire rules. And there's this conflict. To be honest with you, as a businessman, there are thousands of rules, regulations, and laws that I'm supposed to know. I get inspectors that come in all the time, and they'll come in for the Agriculture Department, will come in, or the EPA, or the ATF, or whoever it is comes in, and they have 5 things that they're going to ask. And you know, sometimes they catch me on not enough light, or you know, I don't have somebody took off on the water hoses, the backflow protectors, because it wasn't flowing right or it was broken. I mean, you know, you get some things like that. I got people that work for me. I don't do everything myself. You know, an inspector picks on me like that, and then I ask them a question about, you know, am I doing this right? Well, I'll have to get back to you on that. And I get irritated. I said, what do you mean get back to me on that? You have this one book here that you are expecting me that you're supposed to know everything. I got 50, I got 100 books I'm supposed to know. I'm just asking, I don't know all these answers. And so, you know, we're willing to comply as best we can. But this sprinkler system, you know, I don't have public water. I don't have public septic. I got a septic system. You know, I don't, we have power there, but I don't have backup generators. This is not a cheap endeavor for a farm operation, much less a riding rink or an auction house or any kind of barn where there's going to be people. And so over the many, many years, we've been exempt. And I can only say that that's what we've gone by. I'm not trying to break the rules here. I'm not trying to buck it. I just try to do the right thing. That's what I'm here. And I'm trying to get a fair, this is an open deck that we use, that people use 6 months out of the year when the fish are there. That's when we make our money, is in the summer. Right now, we rely on our bank account to make it through. I have 50 people that work for me between my farm operation, my winery operations, and all the wholesale stuff we do. I mean, we have a lot of people that work for us. We got good health, we got 401k benefits. We pay our people well. We have a good reputation. And I want to do the right thing, but I also don't want to do anything that's going to cost me a real arm and leg. And besides this is going to a precedent here. And which laws are we still obeying? The Supreme Court law or these rules or regulations? And these rules and regulations, from what I saw, started in 2020. It was new. I guess I should have read up on it. I don't know, but it wasn't a requirement. So I'm in this catch-22. I don't know what to do. I want to do the right thing, but geez, I can't. They're talking $250,000 to put a sprinkler system in a little business that holds 100 people. That's gonna. I know that's gonna put out a bunch of wineries out of business in the state if that goes everywhere. And next door, the county next door, Asheville County, none of this exists. None of this exists. Nobody's doing anything. But my farm crosses the county line. I'm on the county line. And most of my vineyards are in Asheville County. My wineries happen to be in Lake County. And so I got to compete against those people. My customers don't know where the county line is. If this is a state requirement, it's got to be in Licking County and Holmes County and Lake County and every county, and Trumbull County. I mean, I feel I'm being somewhat picked on, I guess I got big shoulders.
Gentlemen, the oversight, okay. Other than that, from Mr. DeBevick, I have no further questions at this time. Yes, Ms. Dan.
Mr. DeBevick, you indicated in your testimony that there was an occupancy load of 89. That was determined by your architect, Mr. Markham, correct?
Mm-hmm.
And that was only for the main seating area in the building, correct?
It was occupancy for the building.
And that didn't include the new covered porch area?
No.
And you said,
It didn't exist at the time, yeah.
Mr. Markham, because this is what let Mr. DeBevick testify, and then Mr. Moore's going to have questions apparently for you.
and you said that you built that covered structure because to meet the demand of your customer, right? To give them a covered area.
Yeah, and the weather, yes, yeah.
And so even though in these drawings, there's no table set up, you do set up tables out there.
Right,
For your patients. How many tables approximately can you fit out under that covered patio area? Is it about
think there's a
64?
There's probably 50, 60 seats, yeah.
Okay. And then you said that it's a self-contained structure, but it is connected to the main building, right?
Yeah, because the way the rain comes down the roof, it would run down onto it. So we extended that from the self-standing structure, we extended the roof out to tie into the roof to shed the water off. That's the reason. I mean, you could cut off the roof, but then the water runs out.
And before the citation was issued, Captain Sacco, corresponded with you and reached out and said, are there any ways that you can think of to meet the fire code allegations? And there was no response received from you, correct?
No, because wasn't real clear exactly what was needed. And I've done that before in business where I tried to do something, what I thought was correct or advice, and then find out, well, all that was thrown away, and then we had to do this way. To be honest with you, there's been a disconnect between what really is required to do besides sprinkler systems. I mean, if I would have known that, and knowing that we've been exempt for 50 years from the agricultural exemption, I would have never put that up, to be honest with you. I would have probably moved the building out for 1 foot, which, as I've been told, would be plenty far enough to separate it. Yeah, just, there was a common sense thing that being a farmer that didn't make no sense to me.
The people that are coming to visit the facility, they're coming to consume wine, correct?
Yes, consume wine and have something to eat. We do a lot of tastings there. We're trying to expose the quality of our wine and build a reputation in the area, which we've done. You know, when we started, we were the only winery. There's 16 within about a 6 or 7 mile radius of us now, 16 operations.
And in your building, there's also a mezzanine area, correct?
Yeah, we don't use that. That's closed off.
Does it have tables up there and seating?
No, there's no, that has a sign, we don't use that anymore because we were advised we should be using it. We're not using the basement anymore. We did that simply because in the winter we had an overflow. We stopped using that. We haven't used it since this whole thing came up.
And then with regard to the occupancy load of 89, that was calculated based on seating in the main area, right?
Correct.
That doesn't include the number of employees that you would have on staff at that particular time. So how many employees would you have at a given?
Some days 2, some days 6.
That's all the questions I have at this point.
Do you have any further questions?
No, okay, thank you. Okay.
Any questions, Mr. Mark?
Oh, yes, Mr. Markham. Could you tell me a little bit about your familiarity with this project and the building here?
A few years ago, Tony was referred to me by a friend. I was told that he had built this winery and that he was having trouble getting an occupancy.
Let me back up. Just could you tell the board a little bit about your credentials and what your position and what you do?
I was registered as an architect in 1984. I do not have a college degree. I obtained my registration the old-fashioned way from actually working in the field and taking the pre-licensing exam, which takes a week. It's 40 hours of exam. That's the pre-licensing exam. Once you pass that, you have to take another 40-hour licensing exam. And that's how I got my registration. I've been in practice in the state of Ohio. I worked for firms and done work in 17 different states. I've done everything from single family residential work to 22-story high-rise buildings, a 1 million square foot shopping center in Knoxville, Tennessee, and everything in between. I've been making a living since 1984.
As to the occupancy permit and the computation, could you describe that for us?
We were just asked if we had taken in the employees, number of employees into the calculations for the occupancy permit. The occupancy permit is calculated on a square footage basis, not on a number of employees in the building. And those employees were not added because it's not a requirement of the occupancy calculation.
So when you completed your evaluation for the occupancy permit and the application, what was the number that you?
It was 89.
89. And at the time that you did that application, the rain cover did not exist.
The rain cover did not exist.
Okay.
There was the main floor of the building where the occupancy, major occupancy was. There's a wine manufacturing facility in the lower level and storage for some bottles that are shipped to the warehouse from once they're made. There are handicap accessible bathrooms. There's a food preparation area where they make charcuterie boards and things like that. And there's a microwave oven, and that's about it.
As related to this rain cover, are you familiar with that?
Yeah, I've had dinner out there, but not with my grandchildren.
In a professional capacity, are you familiar with how it was built and the structure itself? And
I am familiar with the structure. I understand the concept of how it was made, and I know of the firm that made it. It's simply a covered porch.
Okay, and my next question. Yeah, the next question would be, are you familiar with the egress to that patio underneath that covered porch?
Yes, it's wide open on 3 sides.
Okay.
500 feet in any direction.
500 feet in any direction. The side that is closest to the main structure building, are there timbers or trusses that connect those two?
Not that I know.
Okay.
I noticed, I looked, I didn't notice any connection between the structure of the porch and the structure of the existing facility. The existing facility roof and the new roof are fleshed together with a flexible membrane.
That was my next question. So it's your understanding and complicit with these drawings and renderings that the only connection, physical connection between the two structures is the flashing and some shingles on that, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. And do you, in your professional opinion, believe there's any substantial risk associated with the patio area?
In my experience and I've been doing this since 1984, I feel that it's a big wide open porch. I don't see any risk to it at all.
I have no further questions.
Your expertise though is in building codes and structures and that sort of thing, right?
I'm a licensed architect. I'm familiar with my practice.
But you're not a professional in the fire code or fire prevention or fire service, so you can't give an opinion as to whether the structure is safe from a fire perspective, correct?
I can only tell you that this is type 4, which is type 4 construction, which is heavy timber. These beams that buildings constructed of would take literally direct application of fire for hours and hours. And they will reach a char on the outside of the wood and the inside will be perfectly fine.
Is there any sort of fire retardant that has been applied to the timber?
Not that I know of. There's no I2S material that I could see.
And if you had to review the building at its present state, what would the occupancy load under that covered porch area be?
I'd have to calculate, but I'm not the design architect.
Well, you're familiar with it, you've sat out there, so you know the approximate square footage.
60, 65 people at the most. And the tables are spread apart because of all the code and everything. It's a very nice place.
Thank you. I don't have any additional questions.
Any follow-ups?
None at this time.
Any questions by members? And I'll allow you to inquire again if we have any questions of Mr. Martin.
I have a question, the architect. You ask a question? Sure. I was just looking at your drawings here, or drawings of the facility, and it says basement is, I guess you said you don't need to, but 96.
No, that's for the total building occupancy. That's
the basement.
well, that was Terry's computations. That's not my computation.
Sure.
So if you're looking at the sheet that I provided, that was actually calculated. Are you talking about exhibit 15? Go back to the page. Yeah, so if you look, that's what our plans examiner calculated.
Oh, and then the base.
He actually did a in-person visit there, and the employee told him that that area was overflow area. So that's why he calculated that basement area, or that's why he figured the basement area into the calculation.
Like overflow area?
When I was there for the original inspection, it looked like manufacturing storage area. Apparently, when he was there, they did have tables and chairs stacked up down there, not in use, stacked up. And I think he even mentioned that in his summary that's with those drawings. But that's why it has a calculation basement.
Did you want to say something?
It is a manufacturing area there. They store wine there. It's produced there, bottled, cartoned up, and shipped to a warehouse at another location. It's there for a few days at that, and then that's, and it's no longer used for overflow. We put a stop to that.
During COVID, is what had happened is that we were down 50% occupancy, and we let people go downstairs to separate. That's really what we use. We don't use it for that purpose anymore. Actually, our sale production requirements or converting that back to, our original intended use. To be honest with you, we were just trying to get our business survive during COVID, to be honest with you. That was a space that we opened and we put some chairs down there. They're just chairs, portable chairs, nothing for. There's no water down there or anything. It's just cold. And the downstairs had 2 huge garage doors, exit signs, and all that stuff was down there. So we, I guess, didn't have somebody who could do it. It was part of usual times.
Well, I think the important thing to note is that, Mr. DeBevick did state that it was used as overflow in the past. The mezzanine area was used in the past and isn't now. So that's what we looked at to calculate the occupancy load. We had an occupancy load from Mr. Martin at 89 when the original building was done. When the covered porch was added, in the fire code and the building code, once that building or that porch attaches to the main building, it's considered a building. It's part of the fire area. So therefore, we heard from them an occupancy load of 50 to 60. So that puts it over the 100 where a sprinkler system is required. So that's what got us to this point. We would have been more than happy to go over that with Mr. DeBevick prior to the construction. But as you can see in the picture that I attached, which is number 8, we've literally seen this coming back from a call. We've seen it in construction.
The premise that the building is exempt from building codes per the state of Ohio and for past federal trials and so on, that Mr. DeBevick took a believe that you didn't have to have a permit. You didn't contact anybody at that point. It seems to me professionally to be kind of a stalemate between one or the other. The Ohio Building Code refers to the fire code as an accessory. And many of the things that the fire marshal has brought up refer back to the Ohio Building Code. Well, if you're exempt from the Ohio Building Code, how can you take the fire code and refer back to the building code as a reference? There's a lot of ambiguity here, and we just want to try to get this straight. And I have in the past researched where the building code has been declared as preeminent above the fire code. The fire code be accessory to the building code.
Some of those issues are for a higher calling than us at the board here. I mean, we have promises of citation. Really, all of the determinations whether we're going to uphold the citation or not uphold the citation. We don't enforce the citation. Some fire officials go to the county prosecutor and act on a citation. Some go to the health department. Get involved, but you either uphold it or we don't.
And as far as the sprinkler system goes, this is a plot of land on a country road with no public water and no public sewer. For him to install a sprinkler system, he would need to build a substantial size pond, not a little holding tank somewhere, but a pond. Filtration system for the water to go into a fire pump and have a backup generator system for that and a fire alarm system, all connected together. $250,000 estimate on that cost. I believe in the current market is well below.
So that's the current market. Right. This is a citation case, but if this were in front of us, teed up differently, secure a variance, whatever fire code, those kind of issues are relevant. Issues whether or not they're going now as it relates to whether you can appeal the citation. Well, Madison Fire has gone out and issued a citation. There's been an appeal taken from it, and that's really what's in front of us. Should the line wrong?
No, I agree with you. I mean, the issue of a variance is not before us. So look, if I may, Mr. Chair, when was this building constructed originally? Not the porch, but the actual
It
structure.
started in 2012, 2018, and then went through all 19, the first part of 19 is open. And so we started like in August of 2018, and then we finished it in the end of May. We opened on the 20th of June, 2019.
So I'm looking at the Lake County Auditor's website. Where do you keep your equipment, your tractors, your truck? Or
We have an outbuilding, we have one tractor, but, you know, we have 165 acres that we own and manage there on both sides of the Grand River. This happens to be on the north side of the Grand River on the highway, whereas our original farm entity is mainly on the south side of the river. That's where we have some grapes on this property right at the building itself. That was part of the requirement of South Madison again. It's the only township item that required it to have it on premise right next to it, so we put some grapes in there. We were going to expand that vineyard. We put everything on hold because of this situation. We bought 72 acres right next to joining to this property because we were going to tore out an old vineyard and we were going to put in more vineyards over there, adjacent properties. But to be honest with you, in today's market, I already had more grapes than I need for my production. We sell about a third of our grapes to other wineries and other individuals, both in-state and out-of-state. So there wasn't a requirement for me to expand much more in the way of food production.
Okay, so here's my issue. I mean, I'm not disputing that there may not be municipal water at the road, but to say it's a country road, it is a state highway.
Right. But there's no water.
Well, I understand that. So
I mean, that's why I put it there, because where it's located, it's difficult to, you know, especially in the winter, to get to.
The other thing, for my fellow board members, I mean, this parcel that this building sits on, now granted, it's not determinative, but the county auditor labels it commercial. Property next door that has all the vineyard, I'm looking at it right now. It's labeled by the Lake County Auditor as commercial. Your property next door, the 72 acres, is labeled as fruit and nut farm. So, I mean, I like you.
It's in the township. It's not, I don't know where that commercial is. It's a Madison Township.
Auditor's website is that. I'm looking at it right now. Other commercial structures. So, I mean, looking at your website, looking at the photographs, this is a commercial operation. This is, I mean, it is what it is. I don't believe that you fall under the agricultural exemption. You're holding yourself out as this is not a mom and pop roadside stand that's peddling wine out of the back room. This is a restaurant.
Yeah, I prove that over almost 60% of our actual sales is actual wine.
Well, it may be wine. It may be, but it's not grown on this property. And
it's in the same township, sorry.
Well,
it's, I mean, it's owned by us.
We're all in the same state. I mean, where does that argument go? My point is, this is a restaurant. You've got cash registers, you've got employees, you've got a bar, you've got a kitchen, you've got all of this. You've testified that you've expanded this business because your clientele is growing. This is a business. This is a restaurant.
I mean, that's what I'm here for, and I pay taxes and I have employees. I mean, what else would I be doing? I mean, every winery, every agricultural farm market, you name it, has a cash register and parking lot and all those. I mean, as we all are. I mean, we're in business.
But you've taken it to the next level in terms of you don't just have a storefront that's selling wine. You're having people. Here's the problem. Here's the problem from my perspective. The board can make whatever decision. You're inviting the public in to your structure to sit down, have food, drink alcohol, and buy your stuff. which is fine. That's the American way. But with it comes the responsibility to make sure that that structure is safe. To me, the agricultural exemption doesn't apply. Now, the question becomes, which is not before us, as we've just discussed, can you get a variance from the sprinkler requirement? I'm putting the cart before the horse there, because that's not before us, but that's something for you and your attorney and your architect to discuss with the fire district and the building official. But, I don't know how you square the argument that the covered porch doesn't turn into expanding the structure or the fire area of the structure, because it does. I mean, I'm not an architect. I'm an attorney and a former retired fire chief. And sure as hell, under my interpretation of the code and every other interpretation that's come before this board, expands the fire area.
How does the Supreme Court ruling on wineries
Well,
specifically, they mentioned that in.
Actually, every appeal that we've had come before us that has gone on to another court of common pleas or court of appeals has upheld our interpretation of the building and fire code with respect to wineries, wedding venues especially. We see more wedding venues than winery venues, but our decisions and our interpretations have been held up in every instance.
Let me just add a little bit to that. So the agricultural exemption is really only applies to the building code, right? In this particular case, assuming that it's applicable at all. I mean, Mr. Porter doesn't believe that it does, but we're not here on any building code. We're on a fire code issue, right? The agricultural exemption does not exempt you from the fire code. Right? You've already said you put a fire alarm in, you put fire extinguisher. Why'd you do those things, right? Because your establishment is still governed by the fire code, right? So there is no agricultural exemption for the fire code, right? So all of the items in the citation are fire code items, right? We call in architects like myself and your architect, right? To help us figure out occupant load, right? Because the occupant load comes from the building code, right? There's a little bit of crossover so we can understand how many people are in a place. We need to sit down and, okay, realistically, how many people are going to be in this particular place, right? What's the best tool to do that? Building code. So yes, you're technically exempt from the building code, but we use the building code as a tool to be able to use, so we can get into the fire code. Right? The fire code doesn't tell you how to calculate an occupant load, right? It doesn't. He knows the fire code better, right? It made. I know it does has some. There are some crossover pieces again for those life safety issues. So I understand your frustration, right? And you're wanting to be exempt from everything because your agricultural exemption. And it may or may not. That's not even before us, right? That has nothing to do. This is just purely fire code, right? And when issues like this come before us, right? We're super happy that your family's been there for 102 years, 104 years. That's awesome, right? That you've been able to grow your business over the last several years. Awesome. We're part of the Department of Commerce. We're all happy and want to be able to support. At the end of the day, though, the public has a right to think that when they come to a place, right? You don't put a sign in your front door saying, hey, we may not have followed all the rules because we're exempt by the agriculture. They just think that, hey, your building is safe. It's a public building and they should be there. They should expect the same level of safety as they would be going into any other place, right? And that's really when things come before us like this. They're say, hey, is the fire department so far out of their mind that they're targeting you and that they have no basis? In my opinion, I'm looking at this. Well, you know, there's a basis for this, right? There's a basis that you have a lot of people there. And that's awesome that you have a lot of people there, right? But when you grow, right, as Mr. Porter said, there's a responsibility then to ensure the life safety of those people that you are having there that are helping you grow your business. And so that's really all it's about. It's not about going after you. It's not pointing you out. It's not saying, hey, this county does it differently than another county. It's really just making sure that places of public assembly, right, when people come there, that they should expect a certain level of safety. This thing is out in the middle of nowhere. You have gas-fired heating things underneath this thing so people could stay out there longer. Just a couple of weeks ago, there was a fire, even in a sprinkler facility down in Butler County, that the whole thing caught on fire. Thank goodness there were sprinklers and people could get out of that thing, right? It's just making sure that we do that. So I think also too, what Mr. Porter was saying is that we also do variances. This board, we have appeals for fire code. We also have appeals for building code. I don't think, in my opinion, I would be against looking at other options to consider as a variance to the sprinklers. If there is truly a hardship, like, hey, there is no water, the cost to put in a tank or a pond is much too large for our thing. Those are things that we govern and talk about all the time on this board, right? We say, okay, well then what else can we do to ensure that the life safety for those people that are coming to visit that place, right? It may be, hey, we want you to kick up your fire alarm a little bit more, right? It may be, hey, we want you to add exit lighting. It may be, hey, those portable heaters that you have out there, portable heaters are not the best way to do that. Let's do something that is a UL tested system that we could put in that can be inspected, that we know is safe, right? So there are avenues that I think this board would consider as a variance to a sprinkler system to help you move along, and again, to ensure the safety of the people that would be going there. So I know it took up a lot of time, but I just want to let you know, we're not against you. We're not picking and choosing and trying to go after you because you're a winery, because you're a successful business. No, we have fought all of that. So,
and I just want to reiterate, I've made my statement about the agricultural exemption, but as Mr. Began said, we do variances to sprinkler requirements all of the time for exactly the same situation you're in.
Yeah, my family
Municipal water out in the country, excessive cost. We do those. That's our bread and butter. Not that I mean, I love sprinkler systems, but sometimes they're just not financially and practically feasible.
If I might add, the patio heaters are UL rated and installed per the manufacturer's specifications, and they actually exceed the clearance requirements from the manufacturer's recommendation.
And how are we supposed to know that?
I have a letter here from.
I have an affidavit from, it's all, if you saw, you might have been some old pictures, you saw those portable things you buy at Kmart or wherever. We don't use those. We install official heaters that were installed by certified installer and stuff. And that's happened since. You know,
yeah, but see, all of these things are questions.
Correct.
Right?
I understand.
And to the fire department as well. These are all questions,
yeah.
Right? I don't think they want to pick on you. I think they want to have an honest conversation with you. Say, okay, here, you got more people. Awesome. Let us do our job and make sure that we can check on those heaters, that we can make sure that we have the firefighter. And if it's a variance or something that you would need, that's something that you guys could talk together and get on the same page with, right? Not having your architect argue with what's actual occupant load on there and say, oh no, we closed off the mezzanine. Oh, we closed off the basement. Well, that's great. There's still going to be people up there, whether or not they're employees or not. There are still people there, and we need to ensure that those people are safe, right? And that there's proper egress lighting, and there's the doors swing in the right direction. All of those things that we would expect from our commercial building. Again, we're not trying to pick on you. So again, I just wanted to let you know, we are rooting for you. We're not against you, right? Going back to what our chair said, right? Really what's before us is when we have a fire citation, right? We either say, hey, there's basis for the fire citation, right? Or there's not, right? So think of maybe one or maybe two instances in my years on the board that we've had, you know, like, hey, that's a little bit going on, or they're working towards getting something and they're trying to push it, like, all right, let's take a little bit of break, let them finish fixing their smoke alarms or whatever, and then we'll, you know, we'll let it go away. So in this instance, I would have to say, I still would have to vote to uphold the citation because I think it's valid.
If I may, Board, in a strict reading of the code and the definitions within the code, you know, as a lawyer, that's what I always go to. The fire area, the definition right out of the fire code is the aggregate floor area enclosed bounded by firewall. Exterior walls are horizontal assemblies of the building. Areas of the building not provided with surrounding walls, which I think everyone would agree here. Included.
We don't actually, because covered patios are part of the building, part of the fire area. Porte cocheres on hotels, those things that kind of come out in front of hotels, that's considered part of the fire area of the building.
Again, I'm just going by the definition provided by the fire code.
I know.
Would you agree that that's what the
We've had those porte cocheres come in here and want a variance because they didn't want to calculate as part of their fire area before. So we know and understand that, yes, that covered area is part of the calculable fire area of the building.
Okay.
I think the master plans examiner that put their thing together actually was probably too conservative in my point of view and undercalculated what the actual occupant load is, but.
And going forward with that same strict reading, then I don't know that the township has provided sufficient evidence that it exceeds that 100 based on my interpretation of the fire area. Because the occupancy permit that was issued was 489. But I understand.
I think they did submit, and again, the evidence presented by the fire department, right? They had a master plans examiner, right, who does code calculations for a living, right? And he's certified to do plan calculations, right? Went through all of the areas in the building and did an area takeoff and occupant load calculation. Again, I think it was actually a little bit too conservative. I think it actually occupant load is probably a little bit more than what he put on there. But that being said, they went through a process to show that occupant load is higher than 89 people, for sure.
Almost Timothy Frank Dick was the designer of the building.
Yeah.
Correct? Mm-hmm. And he has it at 169. Is your occupancy load based on something different than?
Tim Dick is.
Tim's a home designer.
He's a home designer,
He's
not
not
a
an
certified architect. He's not a certified architect.
He doesn't work for me. I know the gentleman, but he's not an architect.
He doesn't have a license. That was some calculation.
Okay, but then we got him at okay, he's no good.
Well, he's no good.
At 169, you're at 89, which is approximately half, and then Richard Smith was at 183.
I would just remind the board that the 89 calculation was just the main seating area in the building, and that was calculated prior to the existing structure, which is part of the citation.
But that was my question. So the 89 is just based on that?
That was the
just on the main area?
It's based on the use of the lower level as manufacturing area.
The basement?
Yes.
And the upstairs is not being used?
And the upstairs is based as an office. Square footage. It's for the office, the use of the employees only, and there's no seating up there for tenants.
Except for the seating of the pictures that were provided to us by the fire department and also shown on your website where there's tables and chairs. It's a great space. I would want people to go up there too.
We don't, it's all been closed off. You gotta remember.
Yeah, but they come do their inspections once a year, right? The rest of the days of the year, you can put people up there.
No.
Right? We don't know.
I believe he said in there that there's a sign that's closed off. Is that not true?
Yeah. Could you give me a page and a paragraph where it says that the canopy or the covered space is floor area?
The aggregate floor area enclosed and bounded by firewalls, fire barriers, exterior walls.
No, ma'am, you don't have to read it to me, just tell me what page and paragraph it is, and that way I can.
It's 1301:7-7-02, and its definition feet at fire area. On page 19 of the copy that I wrote.
And that's it, the fire code or the,
Right.
let's see.
What's the position of the fire department in terms of monetary sanction? If we were to uphold the citation? Your real interest is to uphold the citation, correct? Well, I don't want to shut down Mr. Morgan's name, but is there any group this time, maybe sort of deliberate among ourselves?
If there's a, if you do uphold the fire, the sanction, can we then go back to the fire marshal and, seek a variance?
You could submit plans to the local building department, and then it may or may not.
They will not take them. That I can agree with Mr. DeBevick, the building department.
They won't take it because it's
Because it's zoned agricultural.
Well, that's the
So
one.
the Lake County Building Department will not even
No, they won't.
take anything
You
in.
do fall victim to the.
Even though the county has it as commercial, they still want to?
Correct.
Yes, they will not.
And that all the wineries in Madison that I've looked up are classified the same way under the auditor's office website. They're considered commercial lounge bars, as far as the auditor's concerned.
See, our farm is taxed as a farm except for the buildings, which they tax us as a commercial building for tax purposes. Because you don't have CAU exemption for buildings and structures, you have CAU exemption for your land. So the barns that I have with hay or tractors or whatever farm equipment is still taxed as though it's a commercial building on that tax rate. It's just the land that I'm gonna tax on. So I believe, so that's why it says commercial, is because that's the only category they can put that building in. It's not residential, so it's commercial. And so anything, any structure that you have on a farm is gonna be considered, commercial unless it's your house. I believe that's how it's, I'm not, I don't know, but I believe that's what it is. And so we're in this catch-22. I mean, we're trying to comply. My interest is trying to work this thing out. My interest is not to fuck everybody and go at it. My interest is to try to work this out at a reasonable rate and at a reasonable common sense kind of, this is an open patio that has very little hazard to the people that are sitting out there.
So maybe to jump in on Mr. Morgan's question, you have to fill in the blanks, but there might be, it'd be, the willingness on the part of the fire department, but if we upheld the citation, that was your premise, if we were to uphold the citation, I don't think anything precludes the fire department from settling the citation. Setting the citation aside in consideration of A, B, or C. Sort of a back way around. Is that right? I may be wrong about that.
Well,
It's a roundabout way to get a variance.
But I think, gentlemen, the concern, and Ms. Damon or Mr. Sacco may be able to relate this to you, is the local fire department's concern if there were an accident, if there were a fire. Is there liability then created upon them because of a variance or anything of that nature?
They don't issue the variance, we do.
But to get to you, we can't even get to the county. I mean,
They can't get to first base.
that's the problem.
I guess,
In that step.
could the parties negotiate I just use these phrases, it may not be legally accurate, but can the parties negotiate a variance / settlement that resolves the citation without, because the building department's obviously not going to participate in this shindig, so could they negotiate
Yeah,
something?
I see no reason why the fire department wouldn't be able to set aside the citation outside here in consideration of Mr. Devetic doing A, B, or C, or assuring closure of the mezzanine, whatever the case may be, which is should be the second time I've used the term today, but a prophylactic variance, essentially.
But I don't know that they have that remedy if we upheld the citation, because all we can do is part of upholding a citation.
They don't have to enforce the citation.
Well, gentlemen, if I may, before you make a decision on citation, if we could take a short recess and I can discuss with the state potential resolution in that vein. And perhaps if we need to continue this matter before a ruling comes from the board on the citation in an event that we may be able to resolve it before.
We'll be as open-minded as we can. We'll discharge our duty. Let's take a short restroom water break, allow council to discuss the matter.
And let me jump ahead, and I know this is out of the building code, but definition of area for building, in the Ohio Building Code, areas of the building not provided with surrounding walls shall be included in the building area if such areas are included within the horizontal projection of the roof or floor.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, all right, we walk right.
Thank you.
district actually doesn't have authority or jurisdiction to grant any sort of variance and resolution of any citation, that rests with the state fire marshal's
So is
office.
that true of any, of all fires?
Yes.
I mean, would that be?
So what we've discussed as a potential resolution is obviously the Madison Fire District would still like a decision on the citation, but we're willing, and what we've agreed to is to hold rendering of that decision until 10 days after the variance application that's anticipated.
Not the application,
The
it's termination.
termination on the variance is made, simply because if this board renders a decision, then that starts the calculation running for any sort of administrative appeal that would have to be filed. And, you know, the appellant doesn't want to have to incur those expenses and go through that practice if the idea is to try and resolve it through
So
the
here's,
state fire.
I'm just confused by when you say 10 days, get some handle on whether or not a variance might be in the works. In other words, the opportunity to sit down with fire marshal and discuss options and ways that might give you relief from the fire code.
But yes, there's an application process for a variance to the state fire code. So we're gonna exercise that application to the state fire.
Did you know that?
Yeah.
What were you?
Well, that's
Then that comes back and forth, right?
right. No.
No.
No. And that's why my suggestion was that as an agreed resolution, because a local fire department cannot grant a variance to the fire code. Only Marshal Reardon himself can issue a variance to the fire code. Not this, well, this board can, but it's not before us.
This board could if it was teed up that way, which
As an
would
adjudication.
take you back to the local building official
Right.
who doesn't want to process it.
Therein lies the circuitous nature of this problem. So, yes, only Marshal Reardon can issue a variance to the fire code. They can apply. It certainly wouldn't hurt if the local fire marshal issues a letter in support of the variance request and probably a history of this situation and why the petition is being presented to the state fire marshal's office. But I mean, ultimately, that's up to Marshal Reardon, not me.
So are you asking for us to uphold the citation today?
Well, we are asking you to uphold the citation, but again, we have discussed.
We're asking,
I know, but I mean,
we're asking for a stay,
okay, well, that's,
a continuance before the board rules upon that, to make their decision in an effort to resolve the matter in an expedient amount of time. And the 10-day number came in from the time that the state fire marshal either grants or denies the variance request.
And the only reason for that is because the Madison Fire District would like a decision from the board if that variance process.
understood.
And I'm gonna throw this out there. That request for variance is, that 10 days might be enough time for you to put together.
No, 10 days from when that process is completed.
After
We
the
would
marshal
then-
issues a decision.
We would then
Yeah, so I'm
notify
saying
the board.
In order to put, again, and this is just my opinion, right? In order to put a package together that you're happy with and you're happy with and would support going to the fire marshal, it's gonna take longer than 10 days because you're gonna want a full actual occupant load calculation. You want specs on the fire alarm systems. If in fact you are looking for a variance to the sprinkler system, and lists of other conditions that may or may not be favorable.
Mr.
That's a
Regan,
difficult thing to do.
we weren't suggesting that that process be 10 days. We're suggesting that this board hold its adjudication until 10 days after the decision of the state fire marshal, whether they would grant or deny the variance request.
Yeah, but I'm saying in order for the state fire marshal to even consider that, he's gonna want all that stuff beforehand.
Certainly.
That's our intent. In other words, I think what you're saying is, Mr. Moore, kick this proceeding, don't deliberate on the citation, and set it for some time, for roughly 10 days or whenever our hearings are set
after that process, if that process were to fail and we were to hear this case.
Correct.
We,
And we would,
we would prefer though that deliberation and the case be submitted on the evidence that was submitted today so that we don't have
It
to
would be, you would not need to,
repeat.
we would not need to populate a new record.
And obviously, just while it's fresh in the board's mind that the decision would be made, and then that decision would just be held from disclosure from us until that variance process.
I mean, so.
So you guys are gonna get a case together, 3 months, and take it to the
if not sooner, correct.
fire marshal, and then when his decision comes back,
We could submit to the board
Back to
that, right,
A decision has been issued by the state. Fire
Yeah,
Marshal.
and so the reality here is that, right, I mean, we walked in here today and Susan could have said she got a call from you and decided to continue this, extend it. We would have granted that. Is there any reason why we wouldn't grant it now?
Is there some immediate threat to life, health, or safety that, I mean, you have remedy if there is?
Right, I mean, it doesn't change the condition of the building, but I mean, I'm willing to let them try to get the variance from the state.
Mr. Dean said earlier, that, we are a board of commerce. We're housed in the Commerce Department for whatever semantical significance that is. We also have to support life safety, and so we balance all those things, but I'd be willing to continue this. Anybody not willing to do that? No. I would entertain a motion.
Yes, Mr. Chair, for Board of Building Appeals case number 21-0114, I would move to continue at the request and or support of both of the parties.
Okay, both parties have, their interests are aligned, at least having this matter continued in front of us. Mr. Welch has made the motion. Is there a second? Okay, all those in favor say aye. Any opposed? Okay, the matter will be continued, and then Susan, how do you want to do this? You want us to set it out for February or March?
I'll defer to the state. I have we'll work with whatever.
What do you normally do on a continuance? You
I do 30, but you guys can go 60, 90. You can stay it until that all occurs. And then get back with me.
Whatever's comfortable with the fire department. Right?
We are.
We want to be able to keep this thing if necessary, so.
And additionally.
we would prefer 60. I mean, I know the 30 days was a little
You
tighter.
could continue it at that point
If we don't have a ruling.
let's do 60 days. All right.
And then, Mr. Slater, just as I may, so if it comes and we go through this process and there's a determination made, then would the board like Mr. Moore and myself to then submit correspondence to the board, joint
You mean
correspondence
a
to
little of a
update
trip
you
to wonderful Columbus?
in
could go to
potentially
Worcester.
January or
You
February?
could go to Worcester. We're gonna try a venue in Worcester.
Well, at that point, I mean, the evidence has been submitted and
The problem is, if we're gonna deliberate, we have to deliberate. We have to deliberate in sunshine. But I suppose the parties could waive their attendance. I mean, we're gonna uphold the citation if it comes to that. Or am I wrong? Well, I suppose there could be some fact or circumstance that could come our way that would change that, but I think we'd be inclined if it was put to us, Mr. Moore, today.
And that was my, part of this resolution before we had a decision, because I didn't want to start our administrative appeal time.
Yeah, here's where I think we're gonna have to do, and tell me about this, I don't want face. We're either gonna uphold the citation or the citation is gonna be withdrawn.
Correct.
So that's my understanding.
There
Right,
is
so-
no half break scenario,
Right.
wait, under the. Right. Okay, so Susan will give you dates, 60 days out. You can always communicate whether, Ms. Davis or Moore, you will not need to put on testimony, or this record will be preserved.
Very well. Thank you.
Okay, all right, we stand adjourned. Safe travel, Pat.
Thank you.
I wanted to try visit that.
3 hours.
You got a siren.
They want to review our cases. Gina, tell you know you got something. You can go up there, but I haven't seen him. I don't know how you can tell. Right. We haven't seen him.
Let's try to say it in a nicer.
Yeah, let me just say.
Okay, we're gonna stay on the record, thanks, so safe travel back. I'm gonna, for purposes of our record, Sandy, we had a malaria case, it's scheduled to be remote, case number 210132. Continued, the agenda says it's been continued to December 21st. Then we had another person case, 21-0115. That has been continued until sometime in January, and we have a Westerville fire citation case that 21-0030, which has been continued for 60 days. So that concludes the case portion of our agenda. Do we have, our last hearing was November 8th. Do we have a motion to approve those minutes? So moved. Is there a second? Second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, minutes for November 8th have been approved. And then, we've worked hard today. Does anybody, have a motion to approve compensation for ourselves? So moved. For a second. Second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, subject to, before we adjourn, our next hearing will be tomorrow. Hearings will begin tomorrow at 8:30, no, 9 o'clock, right? I think you said 9 o'clock in an email.
Hey, yes. I'll be honest, the 9 o'clock case should be withdrawn, but I haven't received anything in writing.
Okay, well,
I'll follow up again.
Let us know. Susan's withdraw, if they don't. That's the difference between a big breakfast buffet for these Cleveland guys and not, right?
You know,
Hotel lobby.
It's the dresser salon. I don't know if you recall,
Yes.
plans were submitted.
Yes.
There was supposed to be an inspection last week when I called her.
Father, daughter.
And then I told her, just send me an email and withdraw if everything's good. I didn't receive anything, so I followed up again today and I still haven't heard back. So, so it's up to you if you want to come at 9 or 9:30. I don't think it's gonna hold up any. I'd say 9:30.
You think it's gonna be, so get back to you today?
I don't think she's gonna show up if she's done everything she's needed to do. There's no need to make that's what I told her, just send me communication so no one has to make a trip. And she was fine with that. I just haven't received it. So if we don't receive anything by tomorrow, I would suggest you continue it so I can work on it.
Okay.
To get something.
Kenton. Okay, it's Kenton. Okay.
I don't think she'll come. I'll be honest. I think if you came at 9 and you still don't have anything, there's nothing you can do.
Right, 9:30 then.
Yeah, I'd say 9:30, that works. And then, okay, so.
I don't know what to do with myself.
So then, so that we're clear on the record, our next hearings will begin tomorrow, which is November 30th. Previously scheduled to begin at 8:30, but due to events that may have changed our docket, let's plan on being here at 9:30. And with that, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn. So moved. Is there a second? Second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, we stand adjourned. Sandy, you gonna be back with us?
No.
You've become the resident EBA reporter.
She requested it because it was so much fun.
People talking on top of each other, I like a courtroom.
We have no decorum.
Well, it's the remote, because you always have to get a remote, and then people, you go ahead, no, you go ahead.
Unless you're Miss Collister, then talk over
I was
everybody.
gonna say something.